Emotional intelligence, EI or EQ, emotional quotient. What is it? How does it affect your world, your ability to lead, your ability to be a parent, to build a business, to start a company, to raise a family, to coach, to make a difference in the community around you? And more importantly than all of those, how do you increase your emotional intelligence? Let's start with what it is. Very, very simply, it's awareness and management of emotions in ourselves and in others. Awareness and management. Do something about it. The emotional state that we have and that people around us have. Sounds simple, but there's four components, and the reality is in each of those four components you could score yourself. Just give yourself a score, 1 to 10, 10 being great, and you're not a 10 in probably any of those four. I know I'm not. And there's one or two maybe of those four that you're better at than the others. But take it a step further. In some situations, you're more aware of your state or the other person's state. With some people, you're more aware of or are better at affecting your state or the other person's state. So it's an amazing and very interesting formula. I want to talk about this. But let's compare it to an iceberg. Imagine that there's an iceberg floating in a river. I live right by the Hudson River, so the icebergs are floating in the Hudson River, and about 90% of an iceberg is underwater. About 90%. Depends on the density, a whole bunch of things, but 90%. The water, the river in the Hudson River is flowing south. And let's say it's early spring, so it's going at a brisk walk, 5 miles an hour or so south. The iceberg's going south too. You're standing on top of the iceberg about the size of the letter I in IQ. And I take a paddle, a kayak paddle, a nice fancy kayak paddle, hold it in my hands, and I toss it to you. You catch it, grab that paddle, and I look at you and I say, you know, the iceberg's heading south, you're heading south 5 miles an hour. Can you turn the iceberg around? Let's head north. That is analogous to how much our emotional state, our EQ, the bottom of the iceberg, 90% affects our life. And most of us don't even realize it. See, a lot of our emotional state happens when we're even unaware. The emotional center, the amygdala, I have another video on the amygdala, actually a series on the amygdala and how it hijacks our brain. But down here, the amygdala, the emotional center, is in the non-conscious part of your brain. And very often an emotional state affects us before we're even aware of it. How often does it happen to you? Let me tell you a really brief story. A couple of years ago, I'm working with a huge Fortune 500 company. About $50 billion worth of the management team of this company is sitting in this meeting, quarterly meeting. The company had made $3 billion profit the year before, and they were about to lose $1 billion. It was November, third quarter. A little bit of tension in the room. The plant management team, each of them with 2, 3, 4,000 employees reporting to each one of them, and the director, quality person for world headquarters, is presenting. It's almost lunchtime. The whole group is ready for lunch. They're not really there. Then all of a sudden, the director leans forward, moves his arm, shifts his face, adjusts his chair, without saying a word. The whole room, 29 sets of eyes, freeze, completely freeze, including the quality person who's presenting quality, and they look at him. You can feel the tension. Then he erupts. He challenges what the quality person is showing in the slides, the presentation, where it is, what they're doing. And he erupts. He freaks out, as my 6-year-old described. He freaks out towards the quality person. Then we go to break. That instant only takes a minute or two. Then we go to break, 10-minute break. Let's say you're in the room, one of the people watching. You're the next one to present how your plant, how your part of the business is doing. The 10-minute break, what are you thinking about? See, this little scenario, there's 3 different people involved, really. There's the director who freaked out. There's the quality person who was freaked out upon. And then there are the others that watched it. We've all been in those 3 scenarios. What emotions are going through each of those 3 people? Anger, overwhelm, frustration, fear, doubt, confidence, lack of confidence. Could they be inspired? Could they be motivated, invigorated, engaged? Could they be bored? Could they be apathetic? Could they be saddened? You know, I work so hard for this place and this is how we're treated? Could they be frustrated? Could they just completely give up? So we can turn all of these emotions into what I call an engagement, emotional engagement scale. And it's a simplification of the whole process, but it says, okay, you're 100% engaged, you're 70% engaged, you're 80% engaged, you're 20% engaged. One of those emotions affects you, or 2 or 3, and the bottom of the iceberg starts to shift in a direction. and affects your engagement. And as I said before, very often it's well before you're consciously aware of that shift in your engagement. And that emotion can take you one way or the other. See, our emotional state is affected constantly by everything. You wake up, the weather's nice, the weather's not so nice. You get in the car's cold, car doesn't start. You forget something, you have to run back in the house. Whole bunch of things happen in your emotional state. The bottom of the iceberg is starting to shift. Sometimes a whole bunch of things happen throughout your day, and it's called emotional flooding. Then at the end of the day, you're close to the tipping point. And one little thing someone says, a coworker, a boss, a customer, a spouse, a child, and all of a sudden our iceberg just takes off. It's already starting to move, and that one little thing trips it and it takes off. So in this video, as a result of this video, I just want you to focus on one thing. The top part of that quadrant, the awareness part. Simple thing you can do from this video is every single day, maybe it's once an hour, maybe you set your phone to beep once an hour, and monitor, put it on a graph, put it on a chart, put it to a number, your emotional state in that moment. Maybe it's once an hour. And I want you to start thinking through the recipe. What is the recipe that goes into your emotional state? You could make it just engaged. I feel 70% engaged, and here's why. Here's the recipe. Or I feel a little frightened, a little worried, and a little anxious. And you could rate each one of them if you want. You decide how to do this. But rate yourself, emotional assessment, once an hour, every day for the next week. Once an hour, every day for the next week. And then start mapping out the recipe that goes into you feeling that emotional state. You know what? When overwhelm hits 100%, I'm completely overwhelmed, here's the recipe. Then you feel overwhelmed again another day, 100%, and here's the recipe. Are they the same? Are they slightly different? What do they have in common? Jonathan Fanning, and I hope this serves you. I hope it adds value to your journey.